Okay, so welcome to the call. I'm very excited to present about it. I absolutely love Venus, and you'll kind of find out why. And I'm wearing my most Venusian blouse to honor Venus today, because Venus today is at 12 degrees Leo, which is the degree she will station direct at on September the 3rd. I'm not going to talk more about it now. I'm just going to share the slides and go through and talk about this Venus retrograde and more. Okay, like that. Cool. Okay, so this is a Venus retrograde in Leo in 2023, and I've called it Follow Your Bliss. I think every Venus retrograde is important, but this one particularly strikes a chord for many, many reasons that I will give you a brief overview of as we go through the slides. So this is called Follow Your Bliss. And there we go. So many of you probably will have heard this quote from Joseph Campbell. And if you do follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track that has been there all the while waiting for you. And the life you ought to be living is the one you are living. When you can see that, you begin to meet people who are in the field of your bliss, and they open the doors for you. I say, follow your bliss and don't be afraid, and doors will open where you didn't know they were going to be. If you follow your bliss, doors will open for you that wouldn't have opened for anyone else. I've always loved this quote, but I've never really listened to or read the whole quote, so I thought I'd put it all here. And to my mind, Leo is very much about bliss and the heart, as you'll see as we go through the slides. So I shared a card from my new favorite deck, which is called the Red Seeds Tarot by Linda Hill, Linda with an I. It's available on Etsy from the UK. She does some other oracle decks to go with it as well, which I might collect. And it's based on a thing called the Eleusinian Mysteries, which is where the goddess Demeter or Ceres in the other kind of pantheon went to when Persephone had been taken off into the underworld by Hades. Demeter went and long story, but she created the Eleusinian Mysteries, and the Eleusinian Mysteries were mysteries that happened twice a year, and they were all about finding direct experience with the divine. And it's said that they used a thing called kikion, which is hallucinogenic, I can't say the word today, you get the idea, a drink that kind of got them in touch with non-ordinary reality. And that's very relevant to how I work with the Venus retrograde. Many of you follow me already, and you know that I'm a shamanic practitioner as well. And I use my shamanic practices through the Venus retrograde because, to my mind, it's really about getting in touch with the divine in you. But more on that later. But anyway, this is the Leo card in that deck, and Leo rules the heart. You can see that this has the pomegranate seeds in the heart as well. There's the opium poppy, there's the grain, which was said to make kikion. This deck is so tuned in, and I love this card for tuning in to the heart. Okay, and it means strength as well. This is the strength card. And of course, cœur, the French word for heart, is the root of courage. So you're going to find the courage to find your bliss through this Venus retrograde. So a little bit about my own journey with Venus. I did my first retrograde heroine's journey class in 2017. Venus actually told me to do it in a dream. I'll talk a little bit more about why Venus comes to me in dreams briefly later. But I'm going to be running a 5th Venus class beginning July the 19th. I am going to share my class with you, but I'm also going to give you enough information in here to work with it on your own if you desire to do it on your own. But my other journey with Venus and astrology is that in 2020, I became an OPA, that's the Organization of Professional Astrology, certified astrologer, and I'm now a peer group leader for OPA. And in 2021, I actually got certified in Ariel Gutman's Venus Star Point work. I'm certified to teach and use her system. So I'm a certified VSP practitioner, coach, teacher, astrologer. I actually kind of knew the work already, but I deepened it in the study with her. And I thought it was only fair to become certified if I was going to use her work. So membership community as well, I call the Venus Enchantment Community because I have Venus conjunct Neptune, and we work with the Venus cycle. My main influence when I started working at a deeper level with Venus, of course, I'd worked with Venus at a usual level before my first class, was a little book called The Mysteries of Venus by an astrologer called Mark Lerner. I actually found it in a collection of astrology books at an estate sale. And it just struck me, and it's a gem of a little book, and I don't think you can get it now. And I've tried to contact him in many ways to tell him how helpful this book was for my journey. And there's a really big synchronicity with the book. He wrote it to the person that bought it as well, the person whose estate sale it was, of course. And in the cover of the book, he said, this book is dedicated to this degree. And he said, that's 23 Aquarius, which happens to be the exact degree of my Chiron, the wounded healer. And so I think that book was kind of meant to come in my hands. But anyway. What is the Venus star point? The Venus star point simply means the moment when the sun aligns with Venus from Earth's perspective, called the cazimi. Gutman describes it as informing our cellular embryonic development and resonates through life as an inner eros. Now, we each have a personal Venus star point, and I won't be looking at that today at all. Or on the course particularly, but if you know yours, you can look at it. But we also have a collective Venus star point, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. A Venus star point occurs every 9.5 months, the length of a human pregnancy. We have one star, the retrograde star, where after the retrograde, Venus emerges as the morning star, and the other is the evening star, the direct star, which we're under at the moment. And this retrograde will transform Venus into the morning star, with the star point occurring at the midpoint of the retrograde. Okay. Now, this is the current Venus star. I'm wondering if I can hide. No, sorry if the top of your screen is a little bit covered by Zoom. That's I think if you escape, you can get it smaller, but I can't do that. With each Venus cycle of Venus star points makes a 5-pointed star every 8 years. Okay, and the Venus star point, the 5-pointed star, gradually moves backwards through the signs. So it's almost like this reverse clock working in the background, collectively taking us through into new ages. Now, we are in a very transformative period in so many ways. You know, most people who follow any astrology know that we have Pluto moving into Aquarius. I've also done a video on Sedna moving into Gemini, dwarf planet Haumea, the creation goddess, is moving from Libra into Scorpio, and the three of those are moving back and forth. We had other things, like we had the Jupiter Saturn conjunction at 0 Aquarius, which started 200 years of air great conjunctions. I won't explain further what that means. But we're also going through a very, very transformative time with the Venus star. So we are moving from a very Martian era, Mars-ruled Venus stars, into a very Venusian era. And last year, we had the first Libra star point since 1789. You can see it over there at 11 o'clock. On October the 22nd, 2022, at 29 degrees Libra. And we're going to have one more Scorpio star point, and then it's going to be Libra star point for over 100 years. And then gradually the Aries star point is actually going to fade out, and we're going to move to the Pisces star point. So we're going to move from an era that is very much you know, kind of about action, speed, hierarchy, taking the lead. We can kind of see the society we're coming out of, and we're moving into a creative renaissance in so many ways. And the new Libra star point is a big part of it, but so is the Leo star point, because the Leo star point is the polarity sign to Aquarius, and we have to do the Leo work before we can fully move into this new age of Aquarius that we're moving into, in my opinion. The other two legs of the star that we're under at the moment, as it moves backwards through the zodiac, is a Gemini star and a Capricorn star. And Venus in esoteric astrology is the esoteric and hierarchical ruler of Gemini and Capricorn. So we're moving into a more Venusian era in even more ways than with the traditional astrology that we use. So by the time we move into the Pisces star, we'll have 4 star points that are Venusian in nature in some way. And then we'll have the Leo star point, which is the sun, ruled by the sun. So it's quite astounding times, in my opinion. Ooh. Okay. So just some quotes about Venus at a really deep level. So from the book, Mysteries of Venus, Venus is a very interesting planet. It's perhaps, I can't remember the words up there, but it's clear it's connected with the Earth in a number of ways. It has been said that wherever Venus goes, there goes the Earth also, and vice versa. And that's from The Secret Doctrine, Alice Bailey. Venus is the most occult, powerful, and mysterious of all the planets, the one whose influence upon and relation to the Earth is most prominent. And that's true in so many ways. And I'll give you a glimpse of that. You know, I can't teach you the whole Venus star point work in an hour, but I will give you a glimpse of it. So here's some Venus keywords. I'm not going to read them, or you can read them yourself, but I do want to say that you know, Venus is generally known as love and relationships and all sweetness and light, but Venus is also desire. She's what we desire, what our earthly desires, our physical desires. And she is also eroticism, and she is really also connected to sensuality and attraction. She works in tandem with Jupiter, in my opinion, for the law of attraction. But she's, you know, what we desire to attract as well. And she's magnetism in that way. So she's got a whole lot more to her than a lot of standard texts kind of talk about. So you can see the shadow. She can be overindulgent, self-indulgent, vain, stubborn, possessive, immoral, greedy. And Venus is ruler of Libra, an air sign, and Taurus, the earth sign, and exalted in Pisces, which is why we are moving into a Venusian era. But again, as I mentioned, esoterically, Venus is the sole ruler of Gemini and the spiritual or hierarchical ruler of Capricorn. So I just thought I'd put a little information about the actual planet. So the planet Venus is hot stuff. You know, her temperature is really high, even on her dark side. And yes, Venus does actually have a dark side. I shared this screenshot here that it was discovered that X-ray and ultraviolet emissions come from the dark side of Venus during the transit across the sun. That's when it was seen. And so she actually emits things to us. Okay, so, you know, we're going to talk a bit more about why I use the retrograde cycle more than the exterior conjunction or superior conjunction. But it's partly to do with this. It's with what she's emitting, okay, and bringing down into us. So Venus has been worshipped under many names, including Aphrodite, Istar or Ishtar, Freya or Freya, Cybele, Venus, Inanna, Astarte, and I'm going to say Persephone and Proserpine or Proserpina in some ways. I see them as very similar figures, but with Venus being the divine and Persephone being the earthly representation of her on Earth, because Persephone has this core Persephone innocence to shadow side that Venus has as well. But you don't have to agree with me. These are my theories. In the skies, Venus can appear as morning or evening star. I mentioned that before. The morning star rises above the sun, and when she is a morning star, Venus is known as Phosphorus or Lucifer, which actually means the light bearer. She's bringing the light in. And the evening star is where we are at the moment, and setting after the sun, and then she is known as Hesperus Venus. So the morning star Venus is more yang, more warrior goddess Venus. The Mayans considered Venus the planet of war, and the Ukraine war started after the last retrograde star point at 18 Capricorn at the start of 2022. So the evening star is more yin, receptive, love goddess Venus. Now, I'm not going to say morning star starts wars every time, but it's more related to that kind of action energy. So we from the Venus, what I would consider to be Venus's new moon, which was the last retrograde star point at 18 degrees Capricorn. Venus in Capricorn symbolizes the challenging spiritual initiation of a human soul and eventually of humanity en masse. So that's what we've been working on since January 2022. But the current Capricorn period of the Venus star began in 1986. And then in last January, we entered the Capricorn, Libra, Leo, Gemini, Aries cycle, which is an exact repeat of the cycle that began at the start of 1771. So it roughly aligns with the Pluto cycle. Pluto is 248 years. Venus cycle repeats every 250 years. So I've talked about phasing out of the Mars-ruled VSPs into a more Venusian era. And we're moving into the heart with the Venus retrograde in Leo, which is the sun's home, the ruler of heart and courage. And this is the pattern that the Venus star makes over 8 years. Okay. just I thought I'd add this just to give you a even bigger cycle, that we are in the midst of some huge cycles. I talked in my Sedna video about, she was last where she is now 11,400 years ago. Well, it's not far off aligning with the greater Venusian cycle of 10,708 year cycle. And that was the start of the Neolithic revolution, which completely changed the way that human beings lived on the earth. So, I believe we are really going to move into a time of living very differently. And whether we'll be alive to see the results of it, I'm not sure. So I mentioned that the Venus transit of Leo began on August the 23rd, 1987, as an evening star, and will end in 2100 as a morning star. In 1987, just before the Venus star point of Leo, the first one, there was a thing called the harmonic convergence. Some of you might remember it. It was, I don't know how many were in the end, but lots of people gathered for what was called a galactic synchronization to all chant the Om and just to bring in this harmonic convergence as they saw it. Now, it's said that It said that, I looked it up on Wikipedia about what was the astrology. Why did they say there was a harmonic convergence? And if you look at what I could find, at least, they claimed it was to do with a fire grand trine and all this kind of stuff. But the fire grand trine was very loose. So and we have fire grand trines a lot. So why was this this time picked? Well, shamanic astrologer Daniel Giamario said that he feels this really began the age of Aquarius. I think the age of Aquarius is the fade in and fade out of the ages is a process, but I do think this time was a major part. Now, one of the most astounding things about this harmonic convergence is or this time where people gathered, is that's before Ariel Gutman published her book and even started to write her book on the Venus cycle and the star point, as she has trademarked it. And they picked this image here, which is a 5-pointed star. If you look at the head, the 2 arms, and the legs, it's like the similar shape to Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, which is the 5-pointed star as well, because we humans actually make a 5-pointed star if we stand in that position. So, it's we are Venusian in nature, and these people picked that moment in time. Just, that weekend, it was a week before the first Leo star, and they picked that symbol for it. So I think whether they knew it or not, they were picking up on the Leo star coming in. So this was when it began. It was actually on October the 22nd, in very late at night. So October the 23rd, most places. It was kind of based in Mount Shasta for the most part. And this Leo star, you can see it at the bottom with the big arrow. Just look at the arrows. I know I include a lot on my charts, but it was at 29 degrees of Leo. And at that point of that first Leo star, it was only 3 minutes from an exact conjunction with the fixed star Regulus. And Regulus is the ruler, the king. Okay, and you will see where Regulus is now in a minute. But I also wanted to point out on the left there with another arrow that fixed star Alcyone was also at 29 degrees. And that figure next to it is called Pholus. He is one of the centaurs, which I've been studying along with Melanie Reinhardt. And she and I believe that the centaurs are coming in to heal and bring in the new paradigm. So, you know, that's at 29 degrees of Taurus, which has been a bit of a hot degree lately as well. And those two are in square to each other, the Leo star point, the star point Regulus, and the 29th degree is also a very critical degree. It's a liminal degree, often described as a border crossing between one country and the next. It's like you're leaving the old age and coming into the new age. So I think this harmonic convergence back then was picking up on the fact that this Leo star was coming in and how significant that was. There is a rough fire grand trine as well, but only if I include the galactic center at 27 degrees Sagittarius to the top right. And I don't see that mentioned in any of their texts. So I think it was the Leo star. I think they realized this Leo star was bringing in this new age and this new opportunity to kind of step into our hearts. And we're in that phase, a part of that phase this year. Okay, so again, the Leo star point transit began in 87 and will end in 2100. The shine of the Leo star point, the strengths of it are inspiring others with their leadership, power of attraction and tendency to fame, courage, romance, and creativity. This is actually from Ariel Gutman's book, Venus Star Rising. And the obstacles to living fully in your heart are constant need for attention and pampering. And I had a sudden thought, actually, just like 10 minutes before I started this call, that, you know, we constantly see talk of narcissism and narcissistic leaders lately. And we've had some very narcissistic leaders and still have. And that's very Leo. So it's my belief that we're healing. All this stuff is coming up to the surface to be healed. Okay, so just a thought. But anyway, we'll be working on awakening to your heart's desire this summer, embodying the confidence, wisdom, and kindness that we desire from others, learning to love the self rather than needing appreciation, that should say, and accolades from others, which is really true sovereignty, because you're very happy and self-loving in a healthy way. Learning to lead with the heart, love, or leading with love, and finding your bliss or joy. So just a quick mention of my class. I have more slides to show, so don't go away, but I am offering this for free, so I would love you to check out my class. It is my signature class. It's a 7-week class that's designed to take you through the steps of the retrograde heroine's journey in astrological and shamanic style. So we go through an approximately 40 days and 40 nights journey into your own underworld, and you will travel with Venus from evening star to morning star. And she's not visible in the night sky, only in the middle of the retrograde. And we do some really deep shamanic healing work at that point, because that time is intense upgrade energy. And really, it's inner vision quest energy. It's a deep immersion into your heart, because every Venus retrograde is different. And so you can check it out at bit.ly.com, bit.ly Venus Journey 2023, or hold your phone up and scan the code. It'll be there at the end as well for you to scan, and on the slides when the recording's up. So, but I hope some of you will consider joining me. Okay, so I wanted to just show you the chart for today, for the beginning of this call. Venus is right now at 12 degrees and 39 minutes, right at the top of the chart. For me, it's hidden by the control panel, but that's okay. Hopefully you can see it. You can see the 12 degrees 39 right at the top of the chart. And today, as Venus enters the degree that she will station direct at on September the 3rd, sorry, not September the 12th. I got 12 in my head there. She is opposing at 12 degrees at the bottom of the chart, 12 degrees Aquarius. That's Centaur Chariklo. Chariklo is holding space in Aquarius, leading the way into the age of Aquarius, in my opinion. And there's another synchronicity with Chariklo later in the slides. But Venus enters what you might want to call her pre-shadow today. She's just behind Mars at 17 degrees of Leo. She's catching up to Mars, but they won't actually meet because she slows down to go retrograde. It's almost like she's got to revisit some things before she comes into union with Mars again next year. Now, I pointed at the fixed stars again that I mentioned on the harmonic convergence. At that time, when the Leo star started, they were at 29 degrees of Leo for Regulus and Taurus for Alcyon. And now they have both moved. Now, fixed stars don't really move. It's the precession of the zodiac. It's actually our movement because they are fixed stars. But from our perspective, they have both moved into mutable signs. Regulus into Virgo, which is the constellation or sign of the priestess or the Marys or the mothers, and Alcyon into Gemini, which is the sign of community. And there's loads more I could say about it, but I'm not going to because I don't want to overwhelm you with the details. But I did want to show you how those fixed stars had shifted from our perspective. And if you just glance around at the degrees in the chart, you'll see how much we have at 29 degrees and 0 degrees, or the very early and late degrees of signs happening right now. Next to Alcyon on the top right is Sedna, who's just moved into Gemini for the first time. Pluto has just retrograded back into Capricorn after a dip into Aquarius. And Haumea over here on the left has moved back into Libra before she will then move into Scorpio fully later this year. And I just want to mention it is Juneteenth today, celebrating the freedom of the last slaves in Texas. But there are surprising connections to the 1865 Juneteenth chart this year. And I don't believe in accidents. So with Venus, Venus was one of the first tracked planets. You know, there are ancient tablets with the Venus cycle scratched into the stone tablets because she's the most visible and brightest planet in the sky, which is why she's often referred to as a star. I would really encourage you to get out in the night sky this week. We're just under a new moon, the new moon in Gemini. We've just had that. And so the skies are pretty dark. If it's not dark where you are, if you could drive out a little bit, you will have a beautiful view between the nights tomorrow night, and right through to the 23rd, when the light of the moon really starts to kind of take over, of Mars, Venus, and the crescent moon together. On the solstice, they're gonna be at their closest, the three. So if you have a clear night on June the 21st, please get out and have a look. It's quite magical to see the cosmic lovers, Venus and Mars, and the crescent moon together in the sky. It doesn't happen very often that they're all together while the moon is quite dark as well. So, and look west, yeah. Okay, so I'm quickly going to go through the actual retrogrades and some of the points that are activated on this. So Venus stations retrograde on July the 22nd. which amazingly enough is the feast day of the Magdalene. Now, I kind of see all of these things as archetypal. We've got Venus and Mars. We had all the cosmic lovers right through all the ancient myths, and my memory's kind of going a little bit at the moment, but I'm sure you can think of some of them. But Venus and Mars being the main ones. And we have Magdalene. This is on the feast day of the Magdalene, and the Magdalene and the Christ were said to be married, but many believe that nowadays. And she was the first apostle. And if you ever get the chance to read her gospel, it's out. It's not complete, but you can buy Mary's gospel. And she was believed to have moved to the south of France or escaped to the south of France after the death of Jesus, and taught the gospel there. But of course, the patriarchal hierarchical church would not accept the word of a woman, and her gospel was suppressed. And now I believe that she is kind of, or her word, her voice, this archetype is taking its place next to the divine masculine. So I believe we're kind of coming into balance in so many ways. But this Venus will station retrograde at 28 degrees Leo, 36 minutes, with a big arrow to the right of the chart. It's in an aspect to the moon's nodes, which means it's kind of got this push towards our future and releasing the past. It's also Venus will be in what's called a quincunx aspect to Pluto. And in many respects, Pluto and Venus have a lot of similarity in astrology, because they both represent desire. Pluto is real deep kind of soul desire, coming right down from the bottom of your sacral chakra, that area. And Venus is the heart's desire, the earth's desire. And Venus and Pluto, if you think of the Persephone Hades story, were cosmic lovers too. And how appropriate that both Venus and Mars and Venus and Pluto have similarities, and Mars and Pluto both rule the current south node in Scorpio. But that's an aside. I get so many. One other thing I do want to mention is that we have a mutable grand cross as Venus stations retrograde, and that's a point of change. Pluto will and it's from the sun in Cancer to Pluto in Capricorn. So we're being changed to our core and transformed by Pluto. And it's square to the nodes, which is our future and the past. And Pluto will square the nodes 3 exact times the week after Venus stations retrograde. So, that's one of the main reasons why this particular Venus retrograde is huge. So you will want to look where Venus 12 degrees to 28 degrees of Leo, where that is in your chart for the Venus retrograde in your own chart, if you know your chart. If you don't know your chart, you can get free charts from astro.com or astro-seek.com. I'm not going to teach you how to find where that is in your chart on this. I do help people in my class, and there's also an optional mini reading where we can look at it together as well in the class. One other thing I do want to mention is that Mars was at 20. This is also aspecting, that's what I was going to say. This is also conjunct the exact degree of the Great American Eclipse from August the 21st, 2017. And I think it's become clear that this Great American Eclipse that went right across the USA kind of brought a lot of polarity and separation, not only in the USA. We've seen the rise of extremes globally since that eclipse more fully. And I'm hoping that the Venus retrograde happening on the point of that eclipse is going to bring us to a point of healing where we can start to bring people together again, because Venus, after all, is about relationship. So there's my magical hope. And Mars was at 20 Leo on that eclipse as well, which is the degree of the actual star point, the Venus Cazimi that's coming up on August the 13th. So there's lots of kind of resonance back to that eclipse time that I probably will look at in more detail on the course, because I look at lots of stuff on the course. But anyway, this is the actual chart for the Venus star point on August the 13th at 20 degrees Leo. And it's in an almost exact square to Uranus up at the top of the chart there. Now, for those of us that were born in the very late 50s or very early 60s, this is happening with your Uranus square. We all have a Uranus square at 21, a Uranus opposition at age 42, and a second Uranus square at age 63. And this will be particularly awakening for you. This Venus star point happens to be exactly conjunct my 8th house Uranus. So I feel extremely dialed into this particular Venus retrograde. And that, with it being in the 8th house, that means the shamanic insights I'm getting are just off the charts. But so whoever signs up for the course will get the benefit of the ahas and awakenings that I am getting. So anyway, the Venus star point is also in a trine aspect, a fire trine, a creative, passionate fire trine to Chiron, the wounded healer, but the key to healing as well. So we'll be looking at that. And Mars is also at a similar degree and in trine to the Uranus. So it feels like our relationship energy and our heart energy is being woken up in so many ways through this summer. It feels like we are being called to kind of really not only step into our bliss, but then to open our heart and lead with the heart and be more loving. You know, the real archetype of Leo in many ways is kind of the benevolent ruler, you know, showing love and giving love and beaming love out and not expecting it necessarily from others. Anyway, I see the chat piling up, but I can't see the chat box. So you have to wait till afterwards when I'm done. Okay, so just a reminder of the Venus star again. You know, we will, you'll have that available on the slide. And Venus is what's called the head at the moment. So, you know, heart, please rule the head. And the Venus station direct is on September the 3rd, and it's at 12 degrees, 12 minutes of Leo. Now, I like a little bit of numerology as well. And 1 is, in amongst other things, is seen as the divine masculine, and 2, the divine feminine. So here we have 12, 12, 1, 2, 1, 2 coming together. There's more, I could say more about the numbers, but I won't. But Venus is there, 12 degrees, sandwiched right in the middle of this symbol, right to the right of her. This is asteroid Hecate. Hecate was Demeter's companion that helped Demeter find Persephone and reunite her for half of the year, thereby coming into alignment with the cycles of life and death. Hecate is with Venus on this journey. To the left, we have Juno, which she was Jupiter or Zeus's wife, often referred to as the marriage asteroid in astrology, but I see her as more about our sacred contracts with each other, with all coming together. Venus, Juno is actually conjunct the sun tonight of this call. And I talked about the contract being signed between us, that we're learning from our new way of being that we're coming into. On the opposite point over here, we have Chariklo there again, and she is opposing Juno. So she's holding space for that healing again. Venus is opposing Hygeia, which is preventative health. How are we going to kind of step into this heart health? In my opinion, that's kind of a lot of what this is saying. But we also have a big square to Jupiter. And Hecate and Jupiter are both at 15 degrees. And 15 degrees is one of fixed signs, is one of the world points. They are said to be very potent points of transformation and change. And Jupiter expands everything and expands abundance. So to my mind, this is Venus coming out of her retrograde, saying, I am ready to expand this creative, heart-led, love-filled life, and to be a part of the change that I want to see in the world. It's the degrees and the aspects just astound me lately, and this retrograde, it's profound. So you can see, though, by the time she stations direct, she's gone all the way back to 12 Leo, and Mars has moved way on to 4 Libra. Now, one other little point before I just finish up is that after the last Venus retrograde in January 2022, Venus and Mars actually met together after she'd finished the retrograde at 0 degrees Aquarius. And the two are going to meet again next February at 6 Aquarius, which is on the south node of the USA. But not only that, it's actually the polarity point to the discovery degree of Chariklo, which I talked about in Chariklo presentations. I think, that 6 degree mark, not to make it too US centric, but we are kind of the world, or have been seen as the world leaders. The US has been seen, it's been called the policeman of the world. We represented all that was good and freedom at one point and things. I don't know if it's seen so much as these days. And I think we're the kind of fulcrum point of a lot of the global healing to come. And first we have to heal our own issues. But, those degrees just stand out to me. And it's clear that with Venus and Mars, the cosmic lovers, coming together after the last retrograde at 0 Aquarius and then at 6 Aquarius, that there is a coming together in the sign of Aquarius, which is a more humanitarian people sign. So I'm going to quickly go through these. I'm hoping to finish within an hour. So this is just the beginning of a deeper relationship with the goddess of many things. She is such a deep energy. And this is an integral part of the other shifts that I've talked about. Some call this the rise of the solar feminine, and I agree, except I believe that this is actually the rise of the solar union, but we have to raise the feminine up to be in. Well, best laid plans and all that. The power went out in our entire area. We do have really strong winds here in Utah today. It's kind of very weird weather. And, and I do find it interesting that I was talking about union of the divine feminine and divine masculine within all of us when the power went out in the entire area. Well, they got it on sooner than they predicted. It was out for a while, so I have changed. I've walked the dogs, but I've decided I'm just going to finish my presentation and splice the recordings and send the recording to you. So I'm just going to start at the slide I was at. And I believe there's people looking at the slides now. That's cool. So anyway, I was saying that this is the rise of the solar union of all polarities as we approach the age of Aquarius, which is the polarity sign of Leo. We have to master the Leo lessons to be able to be fully integrated into Aquarius. And the Venus cycle is related to the heroine's journey. We are going through a collective heroine's journey right now, when the hero's journey has been prioritized for centuries. Now, I thought I'd put this beautiful image of the Ouroboros, which is a symbol of rebirth, immortality, eternity, protection, self-reliance, unity, and nature's cycles. Because I believe that Aquarius is going to be this wonderful, at its highest, is going to be the wonderful mix of the ancient in the modern ways. And, you know, the more I learn about myth, the more I learn about ancient times and astrology, the very ancient peoples knew a lot more than we do in some ways. We've lost a lot of that divine feminine thing, or it's been suppressed, or it's been put down and held back. And that's partly why Venus was, you know, not really worked with in depth for many hundreds of years. But anyway, we're changing that now, right? So, did I? Yes, that's that one. So the heroine's journey. Our human society, its narratives, its stories, its movies, its examples, the book plots, all things like that have been based primarily on the hero's journey. Anybody that's listened to any Joseph Campbell about the hero's journey will know that. Yet there's all these stories from, you know, the origins of our civilizations, Sumerian times and Babylonian times, and all things like that, where the divine feminine was equally honored. The goddess was honored and the god was honored. There was even Venus or Aphrodite was even pictured with as a hermaphrodite by some cultures. She had both the divine feminine and the divine masculine contained within her. But the hero's journey is the Mars journey, the warrior, the conqueror, the guardian. And what the world has been missing is the heroine's journey within us all. This is not about women. And the heroine's journey is to the heart and has been depicted in many ancient myths, but not really emerging into our culture again until after the birth of the Leo star, which does suggest to me that the Leo star harmonic convergence was a big part, at least, of the birth of the new age. So the age of Aquarius. To move into the age of Aquarius, we really do need both the heroes and heroines' journeys within each of us to be able to move into the highest Aquarian energy, which is at its heart the collective, the people, living in balance and equanimity. There's no accident, in my opinion, that Murdoch's book called The Heroine's Journey was published in 1990, 3 years after the Leo VSP began. I don't know when she started writing it. Ariel Gutman's Venus Star Rising was published in 2010 after 10 years of writing. So she began that not that long after the Leo star began, and she probably began writing the book, I'd have to check with her, but under the Leo VSP of 1999. So integration of the heroine's Venus journey is crucial right now. If you think about the order of the planets, we've got the sun, which is the core, which rules Leo, and then we've got Mercury, the trans person who moves between the gods and humans, so between the core and to Earth. Then we have Venus, closest to Earth, and then we have Mars on the other side, guardian of the galaxy, out there guarding all the other energies. And we've lived that outer thing. We've been thinking we have to go out into the world. We have to conquer. We have to lead. It's just, and I'm not saying that's not valuable, because it is, but we've been missing this inner journey. And I think it's crucial right now. So I didn't talk about the Venus-Mars cycle. I just wanted to show you where it meets. It meets here at 6 degrees 57 Aquarius on February the 22nd, 2024. At that point, Hecate, the way shower, if you remember, she's next to Venus when Venus stations direct in September, is exactly conjunct Regulus in Virgo, which is the sign of the priestess. And again, if you remember, Venus stationed retrograde on the feast day of the Magdalene. And I kind of see the Magdalene and Venus and all these people as the same archetype, really. It's the divine spiritual feminine. And this is conjunct the fixed star Regulus. Oh my goodness, you cannot make this stuff up. There's a lot I could say about this chart, and I'm not going to, because I would be here, but I will say a couple of things. That the North Node is almost exactly conjunct Chiron. So Chariklo's been over here, really kind of bringing in the age of Aquarius, holding space for us to write this new story. And on the day that Mars and Venus meet next, the cosmic lovers coming together, which is when the power went out last time when I was talking about this stuff. Chiron will be conjunct the North Node of our future and a potential. And it's in Aries, yes, which is Mars ruled, but we're healing the divine feminine. We're healing the yang masculine energy by balancing it with the divine feminine. This is not about one holding sway over the other. Okay, it's pretty magical, to be honest. Yeah, I'm not going to keep going on about this, but look how exact that is. 16 degrees. Look how exact that is. Okay. And incidentally, Juno is at 16 degrees as well. She's 16 degrees Virgo, saying sacred contracts, sacred contracts. Why I work with the retrograde journey. My first reason was that Venus told me to in a dream. In early 2017, she speaks to me in dreams. Secondly, Venus' own underworld journey is the superior conjunction when she's traveling direct and she moves behind the sun from our perspective, and she's invisible for a long time. But at that point, I believe, she's gaining information from out there that she needs to know, that she needs to bring back down to us. She's in her own underworld journey. And then 9.5 months later, she brings it into the retrograde journey to transmit it from the core of our universe, the sun, through to us. Because in her retrograde journey, she is invisible for a short while because she's in front of the sun, and we cannot see her because the sun is so bright. Okay. So I just feel like on the retrograde journey, and Venus told me so, that this is our heroine's journey, our underworld journey. Her outer conjunction is her own underworld journey, and then she brings it down to us. So on the retrograde journey, she's beaming the creative fire of the sun through to the earth and us, and she's inviting us to embody more love and all Venusian things in the journey. Of course, all parts of the Venus cycle are important, as are all planetary cycles. But I have found, and Venus told me, that the retrograde cycle helps us to embody Venus within us and on Earth. What happened there? Oh my goodness. Resume share. What happened there? I don't know. There's something very wonky going on in the earth, so I'm going to share again. Okay, I see what happened, but where's my slides gone? Oh, let me just pause for a moment. The universe is very wonky right now. My internet is usually fabulous, and we don't have power cuts. We haven't had a power cut forever, but we had one today. I think it must be this must make this message very important. Oh, closed captions went off somehow as well. Wow. I tell you, apparently the Schumann resonance is really wonky today as well, really weird. And I've seen many people complaining of weird weather, but I'm nearly finished the slides. So clearly, you know, there's something that needs to be heard, and the cosmos is putting spanners in the works. But I was talking about why the retrograde journey. But this is the heroine's journey. I wanted to talk to you quickly about that. This is kind of what we will look at as we move into the course, how this works, and it works in a similar way. But as I've mentioned, every retrograde is different because it's in different signs, or it's in different aspects or different degrees. And we haven't had a Leo retrograde for 8 years. So and this one is fully in retrograde. Sometimes the retrogrades span 2 signs. This one is completely in Leo. So wherever 12 to 28 degrees Leo is in your chart is the area of life that you will perhaps be experiencing things. But also we need to look at the aspects to it. But anyway, so, you know, this is the heroine's journey, and it's going down within. Okay, and it's descending to the goddess. All right. But it's also really about healing the mother-daughter ancestral lines. It's also about healing the wounded masculine and integration of the masculine and feminine, whereas the hero's journey is very much about conquering. The heroine's journey is very much about doing something with a companion or with companions. That's why it works really well. The divine feminine, the heroine, really kind of likes company to do it with, whereas the divine masculine is out there shooting his arrows, going, you know, I'm going to go and conquer my own fears and all that kind of stuff, whereas all the divine feminine energy in everybody is an inner journey, and it's done with a companion. So we'll be looking at her companions along the way. I mentioned Hecate and all those kind of things. So I think I've repeated myself here. But anyway, you get the idea. So in the Venus retrograde heroine's journey class, we work with the heroine's journey myths. We are particularly this year going to work with the myth of Demeter, Persephone, and Hades, because it's really been kind of speaking to me, and I will be explaining why in the class, of course. It's like the hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell talked about in his book. They have similar motifs, all these myths. And we will be using the Red Seeds Tarot throughout the journey as well, because we are going to follow the path of Demeter, Kore, Persephone, and Hades, and their reconciliation and compromise and forgiveness and learning to love what is, kind of thing. So we'll be working with all of that. The class will also involve a lot of shamanic practices, a lot of journey work, soul retrieval, transfiguration, and more. And you will, I promise, emerge renewed and ready to follow your bliss and joy. And many people have in the classes kind of found their purpose. And I don't take credit for it because I'm not telling them what their purpose is. They find it by going deep within in this heroine's journey. And so this could happen for you too, all right? So there's a lot to this class, and it's not just an astrology class. And as it's the 5th time, I have gone deeper and deeper every time. So if you want to check it out, here is the link. It's bit.ly/Venus Journey 2023 to register, or you can scan this lovely QR code. The to pay is available for 3 more days until June the 22nd, and then it's for a single pay until the class starts on July the 19th. The classes will be every Wednesday, all calls recorded, all slides downloadable in black and white as well as color if you you know, or worry if you want to print them out and don't want to waste the colored ink. I'm very obliging with all of these little pieces as I've learned over the years to be. But I really hope you'll join me because you know, with the Pluto stationing the nodes as right as after Venus stations retrograde, with the 2017 eclipse degree activated, and also the aspect to the new Libra star point activated, and more. This is just going to be quite the summer of transformation. So if you want a transformation journey in sisterhood or peoplehood, then come join us. And here we go again. There's me in my bliss, in the sun, we were in one of our favorite places. I'm going to talk about it. I just felt so peaceful and happy, and I just did a selfie and I thought I'd share that with you. So thank you for joining me. I'm really, really sorry about the interruption. I'm really sorry about our power going out, but hey, what do? You know, stuff happens. There's some weird and wonky energy happening, and I think the rest of this year could be quite weird and wonky too. So come join us in the class. And if you don't, please at least pay attention to the Venus retrograde for yourself and work with it yourself, because it really is a transformational journey. So for now, till next time.